Well, enough boring talk about work. This segment is called Raef's Roundtable, and it talks about all things geeky. And Zach and I are going to talk about Star Wars, and specifically our rankings of the movies in order. And we'd love to hear your feedback. So if you have thoughts on this, or you have your own order, you can email me at raef@raefgranger.com or zach.saunders@rmsmortgage.com, and I'll put our emails in the show notes. And so I'm going to begin. First, I'm Raef Granger. Welcome to the Raef Granger podcast. If you're new to this podcast, notice that the title of what the episodes will be about is in the posting in your podcast catcher. So iTunes, Spotify, Podcast, whatever it is. So Raef's Roundtable means it's going to be about geeky gamer stuff and movie stuff and just that side of my life. Zach, introduce yourself, please.
I'm Zach Saunders. I'm a fellow nerd. I live here in New Hampshire.
Right, and you can hear Raef and Zach talk about networking stuff on this very podcast feed. Just look at the podcast titles. Okay, I have a starter question for you. Why or how did you get into Star Wars?
So we were living in Ohio at the time.
That's a nice place.
We moved, yeah, it is. Ohio was nice. We moved to Florida in '87. We moved to Ohio, I think, in 1990. So it would have been probably like the summer of '91, give or take. So I'm over at my friend Steven's house, and he had just gotten, or his dad had just gotten, Return of the Jedi on VHS. And so I watched Return of the Jedi first. That was my first Star Wars movie was Return of the Jedi. So I was obviously completely lost. No idea. Well, this is pre George Lucas rewrite with dancing bears and songs and nonsense. So this was like old school original VHS, like original cut. So watched that. Had no idea what was going on. Felt very, very lost throughout it. I remember like constantly asking, like, who's this? And everybody else knew like all the characters and stuff. And I had no idea. And I didn't realize at the time that was the third movie in a series of movies. I just thought that I was lost because I wasn't really paying attention. So I saw that, and then I didn't really do any other Star Wars stuff for a long time. And then we moved from Ohio to Maine. And then in I want to say like 95 or 96. I think it was 95. We moved from Maine down to New Hampshire. And I met my best friend and now brother-in-law, because he married my sister, Aaron. And Aaron had all the Star Wars, the original 3 Star Wars movies. And so he and I sat down one night. This is like eighth grade. Like, remember when you had like sleepovers where like, you like snuck out of the house and like all this nonsense, right? Yeah. So we were over at his house. So it was my buddy Phil, myself, our friend Dane, and then a couple other people. And Aaron goes, we should watch all the Star Wars movies in order. And I remember thinking like, oh God, I didn't realize there was more than one. So we watched all of them. And by the time we got back to Return of the Jedi, it was like, okay, I've already seen this one. So now I can kind of appreciate it. I'm piecing everything together. And it was interesting for me because it was the first time that I remember consciously as a kid piecing together multiple movies together into a string of things that made more sense and how they kind of built on each other. So it was like the sum of the parts, or the whole was greater than the sum of the parts kind of thing. So what
captured you? Because, well, before you answer that, I'll give my origin. So I saw episode 4 in my generation in the movie theaters. I want to say 76, 78. I always forget when episode 4, A New Hope, released. And
77, if I remember right.
77. So I saw it in the movies with my mother, my brother, and my father. And back then it was just called Star Wars. Like, we didn't know anything about numbers and A New Hope. I didn't even know that was what episode 4 was called until 15 years later or something. And I remember crying at the end of the movie, not sadness or joy, but of like wistfulness to be like, I won't be able to see these characters ever again. This was before sequels. There was no VHS tape to watch. There weren't comics to read. I was just going to the movies to see a movie. And then this thing known as Star Wars happens. And I'm just like, oh my God. And I was of the age, I forget, I could do the math, 12, 8, 13, I forget. But the character like Luke and Leia and Han, like they were just these awesome characters and lightsabers and X-Wings. And yeah, I remember that feeling, and the movie ends on a great high note. Everybody gets a medal except poor Chewbacca. # give Chewbacca a medal. And
Yeah, that always bothered me. Did that ever, I mean,
it gets
doesn't that strike
resolved.
you as
Yeah.
odd? Like,
It's in
yeah, just
I can't remember which episode it's in. This is one of the things I like about Star Wars is he gets a medal in one of the
right,
one
right.
of the new ones. But yeah, so that's my start to it, and I loved it immediately. And then I remember, I don't know, I think it was that Christmas perhaps, and I'd gotten a Star Wars figure for like either Christmas or my birthday or something, and I just remember loving that Star Wars figure, just having it and just the memories and all that. So that's mine.
So the funny thing is, so I was born in 81. So I was born either a year after or the year of Empire when that came out. So I was just a little bit too young for the Star Wars toys to be applicable. And then by the time episode 1 came out, which I think was 99, yeah, I was still in high school. So no, was I? Yeah, I was still in high school. So when that came out, I was a little bit too old for the action figures to like really like be interesting to me. So I like just missed those 2 windows.
That's too
Because
bad.
I remember, well, it's funny because like I remember my cousin Mike and my cousin Andy are older than I am. By I don't know, I guess Mike's probably 10 years older than I am, give or take. So I mean, he was like right in that sweet spot of like when the Star Wars toys came out and everything like that. And then it's funny now because his kids are now sort of in that same window that I am, where they're just a little bit too old for like the newest iteration, like Rise of Skywalker and Last Jedi, for like those toys to be interesting.
Yeah.
But the movies are interesting. So it's just, I don't know, it's kind of funny.
I remember too, I only had the figures. I didn't have any of the
Yep.
vehicles. My parents didn't earn enough money or choose to buy any of those. Like, so there were X-Wings that were maybe like the wings were like maybe 3.5 feet and the nose to tail was 3, like those big toys. And my friend had a Millennium Falcon that's like the size of a garbage can lid, and you could fit the action figures in it, and I just remember
that's pretty cool.
loving going to his house and being like, to him having a Millennium Falcon would be like, us owning, I don't know what, a Porsche or something,
Right. Someone dropping off a Lamborghini at the house being like,
yeah, it was like amazing. I'm not one of those adults. I like having the figures. Like sometimes I'll see a Star Wars figure and I'll just buy one just to remind myself of childhood. I don't really collect them per se. I actually have the little mini figs, the little mini fig X-Wings and stuff. I keep those on my desk to fiddle with, but yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't really like. So when I was little, He-Man was kind of the big thing for me when I was little. So
yeah,
like,
see, I was older for that.
Yeah,
too old for He-Man.
I had like every He-Man action figure ever, and it's kind of funny now because they're all in a box in my parents' attic. And this sounds kind of funny, but like I have this kind of ongoing debate in my mind of, do I go and get that box out and open it all up and get them all set up and like check them out again, or like will it be disappointing as an adult to like go through that walk down memory lane? And also they've been in a box since like 1987, so
I think,
who knows what condition they're in.
I think what you should do is open them up, clean them up, see if they need to be cleaned up, and let your son play with them. I bet you he would love them. And then you'd be and then you'd have
right back into it.
Yeah, and then you'd have it'd be a new memory rather than like, disappointing or something. Yeah. All right. Well, our goal is to rank them best to worst. Is how I did it. Did you do it that way, or did you do worst to best?
To worst. I actually, to be honest with you, I'm kind of doing this on the cuff because I kind of figure our conversation might actually change my order a little. So.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So I'm a little concerned that I'm not completely set in stone. I know my favorite one and I know my least favorite one, but the one in the middle.
We can hit the pause button and just hang out together right here, and you can just Oh, okay. You'll just do it live.
Let's just commit to it. I'm going to do it live and in living color.
Well, I'll start with my number one.
Okay.
Can you guess what my number one is?
Your number one. Number one's your best one, right?
Yeah, best. Oh, and for people who aren't maybe necessarily as Star Wars, knowledgeable. So here's what we've got. We're going to rank. Here's the order of the movies as they came out. Not as they came out. The order of the movies in order of watching them from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. Episode 1, Phantom Menace. Episode 2, Clone Wars. Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. These are known as the prequels. Episode 4, A New Hope. Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back. Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Episode 8, The Last Jedi. Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. So for those of you that aren't necessarily Star Wars geeks, if you were born like me, 1969, you saw in the theaters, or what was big, was A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. And then there was a huge gap in time, so maybe 20 years. Then the prequels came out, Phantom Menace, Clone Wars, Revenge of the Sith. And then just recently, quote, past 5 years or so, The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker, which ends the Star Wars universe of the Skywalker people. There's still going to be Star Warses because Disney now owns it, and but it'll be all new people theoretically.
The Skywalker people sounds like an entire band of aliens.
Yeah, the Skywalker.
We are
trees.
The Skywalker people.
Then there's these two little independents. Rogue One. These aren't the official names. It's like Rogue One, a Star Wars story or something. But Rogue One.
Yeah,
and
then Solo, a Star Wars story. Right.
Yeah, known as
the standalone non-Skywalker tree.
Well, no, they still are on the Skywalker tree.
Well, they're still in canon, but they're I should have said they're not following the family of Skywalker.
Right, they're not in the 9. Right. They're not in the. They're connected to the story, one through character Han Solo, and the other, which I want to talk to you about, through a little nugget that's set in A New Hope, is how Rogue One got created. So, okay, what do you think my number one? This is my favorite Star Wars movie of all time. If I couldn't watch any others, I would watch this one.
If I had to guess, I would say A New Hope is probably your number one.
Ding,
only
ding,
because that was your
correct.
entrance into it.
Yep, exactly. Just tons of nostalgia. I literally probably watch A New Hope once a year. It happens to be my daughter's favorite too, so she's always asking for it. So, yep. All right, A New Hope. Why? Tons of reasons. Yeah, introduces us to the story. Lots of nostalgia. Luke and Leia and Han Solo. Can't go wrong. Lando Calrissian. Okay. What is yours?
I have a theory about why I think you like A New Hope the best.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So there was this guy named, I'm going to draw a blank his name now that I'm saying it, Joseph Campbell. So Joseph Campbell did a study of, he was like, I can't remember, probably like back in like the 40s or 50s, but he did this like big study on like how you could take all of like the classic stories like Beowulf and like the Iliad and the Odyssey and like all this, you take all these stories like King Arthur, like any like kind of like famous old story that you can think of, and you can boil it down into what he called like the hero's journey. And so part of it is like, suffering a loss, needing to leave home, and I'm butchering the order of these, but like he has them all in this like big like wheel, and and then like the wise old helper, and then like the magical aspect, and then facing your fear, and then overcoming the objection, and then ultimately realizing that by relying on yourself with the help of your guide, you ultimately can achieve your goal. And Star Wars sort of encapsulates that entire hero's journey, or A New Hope kind of encapsulates that entire hero's journey from, Luke on the farm, always looking off to the distance, wanting bigger and better things. Ben Kenobi, the wizard-esque character kind of in the background that's kind of like overseeing him and keeping him safe, even though he's, an arm's length away at all times, but always kind of there. And then needing to leave home, which he actually does. And then the loss of his mentor, and then, facing down Vader, and then ultimately, turning off the targeting computer and just believing and trusting in himself and knowing that Ben's voice is in his head, but he has to do it alone. And it just sort of like, it really resonates that. And I think, at the age that you were when you first saw it, I mean, it's space, it's laser swords, it's like you kind of hit that at the perfect age for all of that stuff to like just really resonate with that little boy brain.
Yes, totally. It also ticks a lot of the boxes that I just like. So I'm a fantasy person first and sci-fi second, and Star Wars fits into a genre known as sci-fi fantasy. So like sci-fi would be, I'm trying to think of Leviathan Awakes, I think. That real like, crunchy technical sci-fi where, you could easily, like you just said, the Force, that's magic. The wizard, Obi-Wan Kenobi, so anyway, so I love fantasy, so it fits that. And, but I also like sci-fi, so it fits that too. And I also love the genre known as coming of age types of movies. Those are things like Karate Kid. I'm trying to think of other ones that are that. One of my friends, make fun of me is Bring It On, which isn't.
Oh God, Kirsten Dunst. Yes, that movie
I
holds
love
such a
that
sweet
movie.
spot in my mind. I can't even tell you, and I have no idea why. Like not a cheerleader, never into
Nope,
cheerleading, never
me
did any
neither.
stuff. But like for some reason, that movie just resonated with me.
Yeah,
Such a
I
weird
love
way.
that movie. I watch that movie one time a year too. So,
Right.
yep. So you're right. It ticks a lot of those boxes for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. What's your number one all-time favorite?
What do you think? What's your guess?
Shoot. Okay, here's my thought process. It's not Phantom Menace.
Nope.
It's not Clone Wars. It's not Return of the Jedi. So I'm thinking Empire Strikes Back.
Bingo, bingo, bingo. Yep, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. I had help with that because that is a lot of people's number one.
Yeah,
but also the time frame hit you right for that.
Right. Yeah, I was old enough when I saw that it resonated with me. It's funny. I feel like a lot of people pick Empire as their number one, and I feel like it's for a lot of different reasons. I like it. There's a lot of things about Empire Strikes Back that I really enjoy, but I think one of the things that I really, really like about it is not because it has the big reveal of, Luke, I'm your father, but I like that that was kind of like a tick in a series of like other things that was going on, that if you don't have the context of it, it doesn't matter to you, but if you have the context, it becomes like really important. So I like that. And I also so I have a real sweet spot for movies that sort of transcend their genre. So for example, like my favorite Marvel movie is Winter Soldier, because Winter Soldier is an awesome like spy versus spy espionage movie that also happens to have, Captain America,
superhero
and
characters,
Black Panther, and superheroes.
Yes.
I feel like Empire sort of checks that box for me, where it's a really good movie, aside from like the lightsabers and the battle and everything else. Like you can take away that sci-fi element to it and the movie still works really well. And I also think they did a great job in Empire, where the tough thing about the middle movie in a trilogy is you kind of need to have the win in the first movie, the loss in the second movie, so that the win in the third movie can feel bigger and better, like a much larger, more insurmountable type thing. And oftentimes in those second movies, I feel like they just miss that, where it kind of becomes a depressing leave off. So instead of the credits rolling at the end of the movie and you being filled with hope of like, oh my God, they have so much to overcome, how are they going to do it, I can't wait to see what happens next, you're left with like all right, so they lost,
right?
I really hope there's a third movie.
Yes.
And Empire didn't feel that way at the end, although it was like you left that movie going like, man, they have a lot to do in the next 2 hours. But
so are you saying that you didn't feel that, because I felt like the rebels got beat back in Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, they 100% did. But what I mean is, like, so taking another movie, if you look at The Last Jedi, that movie had a very similar kind of cadence. You know what I mean? Where like at the end of it,
which is the, for those that aren't wizards at this, that's the middle movie of the last three. So it's like the same as Empire in its position of story arc.
Yeah, within its relative position within that trilogy, within the, what do you call a series of 9 movies? Is it like,
I don't know,
nineology? I don't know. Right,
yeah,
sure.
nineology. Yeah.
But if you look at like, right. But if you look at like Empire, and then look at the Clone Wars, which is the middle of that 3-movie series, and then look at The Last Jedi, which is the middle of that 3 series of movies, you can feel where, particularly The Last Jedi, but also in a lot of ways, the Clone Wars, where they missed that beat. And it felt like you were leaving the movie in a depressing place and not a place of anticipatory excitement.
And they did that well in Empire, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I feel they did it very well in Empire.
Okay. I get it. I see it. Yep. All right. Let's do number 2. You're not going to believe what my number 2 is, and it's going to create nerd rage among lots of Star Wars fans.
Are you in episode 1 in the second place?
Yep. That's exactly right. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Let me tell you why there's nerd rage, including maybe even Zach's. So episode 1 is probably the most reviled of all the Star Wars movies, with maybe Return of the Jedi with the Ewoks and stuff. But the reason why people hate episode 1 is They don't like how long and kind of slow paced it was. They don't like Jar Jar Binks. They don't like pod racing, with little Anakin. And I think sometimes he's even called Woodakin because he's kind of wooden in his acting, which I just think's not accurate. So that's a lot of the reasons why I think there's a lot of nerd rage over what I'm saying. And now here's why I love him. I love episode number 1. Okay. Again, it goes back to A New Hope. Think of how long I waited after the trilogy to see another Star Wars movie. And then it was episode 1, which again, most people just hated because I think they wanted it to be more like the last 3. I loved its slow pace. Okay, here's why I love it. Liam Neeson is in the movie. Liam Neeson. That's like huge. And he plays this like awesome type of Jedi, this like totally different kind of, he's not a swashbuckling Jedi. He's that wise, and I loved the slow pace. Absolutely loved the fight scene with Darth Maul, right? Never saw Liam Neeson getting, okay, spoiler alert, never saw Liam Neeson getting killed, right? Qui-Gon Jinn.
Well, it's been 21 years. If they haven't seen it at this point, then,
Exactly. Never saw that coming. For whatever reason, Jar Jar Binks, did I go buy his action figure? No. Did I like I don't like the Gungan King more than Jar Jar, It could be that Jar Jar and those characters didn't bother me as much as because my children were younger at that time. And I remember watching the movies with them and they were like, Jar Jar Binks, of course. Why wouldn't there be one? Like it was for like little kids and they loved it and they didn't see a contrast. And those are my reasons.
So I didn't dislike episode 1. My roommate in college, Maddie, hated.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that hate it.
I mean, like gutturally, like remove it from canon, signing petitions, like hated it.
Yep.
Here's the thing about episode 1, and that I think is sort of I want to say it's redeeming quality / justification. I think it's this. You hit the exact moment for A New Hope that you needed to hit. You were the right age at the right time. That movie came out in theaters. Fast forward the clock, however long that was, like 77 to 99. So what's that, 22 years? Yeah, 22 years later.
You're the math guy.
You, in theory, would have kids that would be approximately the same age you were when you saw A New Hope.
That's
going
exactly
into Phantom Menace. So I think the thing that was sort of the undoing of episode 1 was that, and again, we talked about this in the B&I podcast, but trying to be all things to all people. It was like they were trying to attract the nostalgic, 30 and 40-year-old from seeing New Hope when it was in theaters back into the Star Wars universe, but they also needed to carry over the children that would buy the action figures. So I think that was sort of their problem. But having said that, I thought it was the strides they made towards broadening the Star Wars universe, I thought was huge in that. And to your point, previously we had, Sith, which weren't even Sith, they were just Darth Vader and the Emperor. And everyone was just sword fighting and running around and using the Force and doing this and doing that. Whereas they sort of went in and sort of began to deep dive into the like religion of the Jedi with, you've got Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is, young and learning, and we get to see that relationship develop with, the master and the apprentice on the good side, much as we did with the Emperor and Vader on the dark side. And then you also had this new kid, Anakin, so you could see this generational growth throughout.
You saw how CP3O got created.
Exactly. But you also saw that there was more to being a Jedi than carrying a lightsaber and using the Force. There was, the more, I don't even know, like pragmatic elements of it that Obi-Wan really brought to the forefront. And, that was kind of cool to see because, the novels and comic books and like all this other stuff that they had going on at the time, that dove into different elements of being a Jedi, but we hadn't seen it on the big screen. So I thought that was a really like brave move. I don't know that it necessarily landed the way that they intended it to.
Probably.
But, I think you kind of combine that element with the, audience generational, gap between the new kids they're trying to attract and the parents. And I think that's kind of where the wheels came off that a little bit. But I didn't really mind Jar Jar all that much. I thought he had a little bit too much screen time. Like he would have been kind of a cute character to kind of have as like a one-off, or maybe like the very beginning, and then they get to the Gundam City, and then like he's kind of gone. But
yeah.
But also, I get it. They needed to have some campy element to it, because otherwise, you're not bringing your 7-year-old to go see a Star Wars.
Right. And it just didn't bother me. And I was also thinking, Samuel Jackson, awesome. There's more than Jedis than Yoda and Obi-Wan. Ewan McGregor, that's my first introduction, I think, to Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. Freaking awesome. Like,
yeah, I was trying to think. I don't think I remember him in any. I'm sure he was in stuff before.
I'm sure he was.
He must have been, but I don't remember him. The only other thing I remember him from is that movie Big Fish, where it was like he was the dad retelling the story of his life, and he was embellishing all of his stories. But
I loved the Natalie Portman with the handmaiden type of thing, the Queen with the handmaiden hidden thing. That was cool. And the other thing,
the Natalie Portman, Keira Knightley thing was really neat. Like they looked so much alike in makeup; it was crazy.
Yes, and I liked the other thing is I'm an English major. Like my major in college was English literature. So I don't mind I knew this was a story to set the path for all the stories. Like you need time to set the stage. It's not, and I was satisfied with the one swashbuckling scene with the fight scene with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn. So, you saw different force powers too, like the ones where they could hold their breath and they could shoot up like really high with the force jump and
like force jump. And then, I mean, you got more than like, seeing through a visor and pushing people around and knocking down a couple of like, boxes and throwing them at Luke. You actually got to see like force jump. You saw force persuasion in a way that, although Obi-Wan had used in the previous trilogy, or the previous in the release date, but post in the chronology of it. But you saw a little bit of that, but you saw it in a lot like bigger way. But also the other neat thing they did in there was I'm trying to remember what the guy's name was. Is it Watto, the flying?
Oh yeah, I love him. He goes
where Obi-Wan tries to use the force and he's like, oh, that doesn't work on me. And that introduced an interesting element, which is, we had learned in the original trilogy, power of suggestion can be very, useful with, weak-minded people. But now you're seeing like, oh, okay, so they're not this like all-knowing, all-seeing entity. Like the Jedi do still have weaknesses. And it was cool seeing that, he couldn't just manipulate his way off this planet.
And they can die.
There are species out there that, and they can die.
Yeah, not from old age or something. Yeah, one of my friends can do that quote, and I don't know if it's the right species, but it's something like Watto's quote is something like, I'm a Tidarian. Mind tricks don't work on me.
Mind tricks don't work on me.
Yeah. It was just,
I liked.
And the pod racing didn't bother me. Again, did I?
I like the pod racing. I thought one of the cool choices they made with pod racing was a lot of times in sci-fi movies when there's a crash, it's just an explosion. And I liked it in the pod racing, like during those accidents, it wasn't just this like fireball and you moved on to the next thing. It was like you saw these things just getting torn apart from the speed. Like your ability to appreciate just how fast they were moving, I thought was really well done.
I loved it. All right, what's your number 2?
So my number 2 is, let me see here. I think my number 2, needs to be episode 1. Oh no, sorry. A New Hope, episode 4.
Okay, right. The first one in time. Yeah.
Yeah. For very similar reasons to what you and I just discussed. It was like the idea of like, the introduction of all of it. And I liked that, again, I was probably 14 or 15 when I saw it. So it had been out for like 20 years at that point. But it was one of the first times I can remember, and I think this may be why I like it so much. It's one of the first times that I can remember seeing a movie that was older than I am. That I felt still stood up and still worked, because you watch like old like Western movies with like whoever, and like I remember watching Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid when I was a kid, and just being like, dude, this movie just feels old. And Star Wars, older than I am, didn't feel old.
I wondered that because they hold up in my mind, but I just didn't know if it's nostalgia.
I don't know. Maybe partially it is. I don't really.
They kind of do.
You can rewatch all of them and they all work.
They do hold up.
I will tell you that I'm kind of one of those purists though, that I don't like the reworks that Lucas did on a lot of them.
I saved that question for the end. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that for the end.
Oh, okay. All right, we'll table that.
Let's do your number 3.
All right, my number 3 is Return of the Jedi.
Really? Okay, how come?
Yeah. For a couple reasons. One is I feel like if they had never made another Star Wars movie, I would have been happy with that original trilogy. And I feel like the way they ended the original trilogy, I liked it. And I liked it for the same reason that we talked about with Empire, which was, at the end of that, Vader's dead. So the good guys won.
Yep.
Everyone's together again. Big celebration. But there's still that where does Luke go from here? Because now he's the sole remaining practitioner of the Jedi art. And so I there's that little itch that I get to scratch with movies where when someone's the last of their kind, where do you go from there?
Isn't that when Yoda says, no, there's another? Isn't that Return of the Jedi? Mm-hmm. Or is that in number 2? Empire.
No, that's I'm trying to remember. That's in Empire, because that's when Luke has the vision when he's lifting the rocks and he sees his friends on Vespin, the Cloud City, and he goes to leave, and Yoda's like, you're not finished your training, you can't face Vader, blah blah blah. And he's like, my friends are gonna die, and then they leave. And that's that scene where the red light is coming up and you hear Obi-Wan's voice, and Yoda is shrouded in.
Oh, that's when Obi-Wan says that boy was our last hope or something. And
then there is another.
Okay. All right. So because you're right.
I was going to say.
Okay. I'm with you on that. He is the last one, because even if Leia has force powers, you just somehow knew she wasn't a Jedi.
Well, it's I can read the Bible. It doesn't make me a priest.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So, she may have skills, which we'll talk about why the Leia having force abilities later in the movie drives me bananas. But
I don't like it
that
either.
Yeah, that drove me crazy. That, and the other reason why I really like Return of the Jedi is, and this is going to sound kind of dumb, and this will be what I probably get either hate mail on or someone being like, finally somebody else noticed it. My entire life, and I mean until last year when I was having this conversation with my brother-in-law, I thought Yoda was dead the entire time, and I thought Obi-Wan was dead the entire time.
All right, what do you mean?
When they just vanished, Yoda's laying there and he's dying, and he's coughing up a lung, and he's talking to Luke about how you rushed through your training, did you? Unprepared were you for the burden of, he goes through that whole thing, and then when he dies, he just fades to nothing.
Right.
I thought that was because the entire time throughout this entire series of movies and all the interactions they had, that they were just a Force ghost that was there, and I just assumed that everybody else thought that. I never even brought it up because I was like, oh, it's pretty cool, because when Obi-Wan dies in A New Hope, when he vanishes, Vader looks surprised. I mean, he has a mask on; you can't tell what his face looks like.
No, but he kicks the robe. You can tell he's surprised.
Yeah, he reacts like, "What the hell just happened?"
Right.
And then you learn later on, in the prequels, especially like Revenge of the Sith, that when spoiler alert, when Anakin goes wholesale on the Jedi Temple and kills thousands of people, their bodies are all still there, which further reinforced my thought that Obi-Wan had been dead the entire time and that Yoda had been dead the entire time. And when their usefulness ran out, for lack of a better expression, their essence faded back into the Force.
Oh my gosh.
I just knew that to be true.
That's mind-blowing.
No idea why. And
okay.
Then Aaron's like, dude, you're out of your mind. What are you talking about? And I explained this whole thing to him. He's like, oh my God, I never thought about it that way. He goes, you're definitely wrong, but that's an interesting perspective. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. So I guess that big what if thing in Return of the Jedi is also another reson why I like it. All right, so how about you? What's your number?
My third is Revenge of the Sith. So I did like watching, was curious, how's Anakin going to turn into Darth Vader? And I thought, again, I mean, there's a lot of criticisms in Hayden Christensen and his acting and stuff. I just don't have a problem with it. But then again, I like Bring It On. So obviously, somebody doesn't have to do Shakespeare for me. I thought he was fine. Yeah, he's a little whiny and stuff. But my point is he got angry enough and not contorted, switched to the dark side, ate his soul enough for me in that movie that I could see him turning into Darth Vader. I could see him wiping everybody out in the Jedi Temple, all those poor Jedi kids. What do they call Padawan learners and stuff? And so
the younglings.
The younglings, it was believable. He made the character believable enough that the dark side consumed his soul for his desire to keep Padme alive. I
actually thought he was a better actor as evil Anakin than he was as nice Anakin. Like, I
Yeah.
actually had a much harder time taking him seriously, like while he's fixing things up and
Yeah.
talking to Padme, and then that whole like dialogue with he and Obi-Wan where he's like, she's all I thought about for my entire life. Come on, like you're a wizard and you're gonna whine over a queen that could never marry you, and come on, dude.
Right. The love scenes, like when I watch it, is that what the love scenes are where he rides that
Yeah.
big thing? I fast forward those, or is that Clone Wars?
I can't. I think that's Clone Wars because there's a part. I feel like that's the one where, yeah, that's got to be Clone Wars because that's when they're on her home planet.
Okay.
After the assassination attempt, and then he's riding that
like furry flea like looking thing. Yeah. Oh, hang on. I've got some. Go.
So I was saying, when they're like that whole like them falling in love sequence where they're on her planet and he like picks up the pear or whatever it is and sends it over, and then he's riding on that cow thing in the field and he falls down and that goofy laughing, like I could do without that.
You know what that movie's like? It's the Armageddon scene with the Ben Affleck with the animal cracker.
Oh my god, the animal crackers
in the belly button. yeah. That's that version of that. Yeah.
Which, by the way, you want to talk about an interesting pitch meeting to sit in on? Like, okay, so we have this movie where there's an asteroid coming and we're going to send up a bunch of miners to drill, much like they would for oil, and insert a nuclear weapon. Oh, okay, is there a love scene? Yeah, there is. Well, what are you thinking? Well, the stakes are really high with this, planet-killing asteroid. So I was thinking, why don't we take a animal cracker giraffe and shove it in Liv Tyler's belly button and then watch Ben Affleck eat it? Oh, all right, cool. All right, we got a movie, guys. We got a movie. Let's do it. Like, it's just weird stuff.
I know, and I love how the cast of characters is, it's perfect though. Bruce Willis with that smirk, and Ben Affleck, and Liv Tyler, and then Steve Buscemi. I mean, it's like, what kind of cast is that?
Steve Buscemi is one of those guys that if he's in something, I'm gonna watch it. I have no idea why. There's just something about him that I just find like he's so I feel the same way about John Malkovich.
Yes, I just watched Wedding Singer the other day, and I totally forgot Steve Buscemi's in that.
Oh
yeah.
Woo! Yeah. Best guitar player ever. No lessons. Thanks a lot, Dad. Anyway, back to Star Wars.
All right, Star Wars. So yeah, so Revenge of the Sith is number 3. I did like watching him turn in. Yeah, and did I love the last statement when he goes, how's Padme? You killed her. No. Like, that was a little weird, but it was okay.
Awkward.
All right,
what's your number 4?
My number 4 is Empire Strikes Back.
Okay.
So for all the reasons, we specified. So I'm doing it in, if I had to pick and I had to watch them in this order, that's what I would do. So Empire Strikes Back, great movie. I mean, there's, everybody knows everything about Empire Strikes Back, I feel like. So nothing there. How about your number 4?
My number 4 is actually Clone Wars.
Oh, okay. That's my number 5. So.
Oh, okay. So we can talk about this kind of. All right, perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So I liked Clone Wars for the same kind of general reasons that I liked the Phantom Menace, which is I liked that they were trying to introduce a bigger universe within the Star Wars universe, and not necessarily bigger, like just purely in size, so much as the cloning facility for the Caminos or the Kaminoan. I can't remember how you pronounce their.
I'm not good on that stuff.
But the fact that like that backfills why all the stormtroopers are the same size, which also lends credence back to A New Hope, where Leia goes, "Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper?" Which didn't really make sense to me when she said that, because stormtroopers are kind of whatever. But now that they're all clones of the same thing, it makes sense why Leia would say, "Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper?" Because every stormtrooper she's ever encountered has been exactly the same size.
I've never thought of that.
I like that. I also like that. Like there's a like again, kind of getting back to that, much like Qui-Gon Jinn dying, and spoiler, in episode 1 and episode 2, I like that they started introducing more and more elements of like the like vulnerability of the Jedi. You know what I mean? Like Grievous and Obi-Wan are having this fight and he almost dies in that fight. It's not like he just walks in as a Jedi and just goes wholesale on everybody and kills everything. I mean, he needed to be careful. He got a little arrogant, thinking he could take on a robot with 4 lightsabers, and he almost died from it.
Yeah.
I liked that. I like that we got to see the betrayal of the stormtroopers with Order 66.
That happens in Clone Wars? I couldn't remember if that was that. Yes, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it happens in Clone Wars. I like that. I like that and Clone Wars had some of my favorite Yoda moments in it. I like when Obi-Wan and Yoda are talking after the fight, like after everything's all like the droid army is destroyed and all the clones are there, and they're like, Obi-Wan says, we won. And he goes, like, did we? Like, look at all the death around us. Is this really a victory? And you sort of saw that. You saw that element of Yoda that you didn't really see it. Much like Qui-Gon was a different type of Jedi, you realize that Yoda is much more of like almost like a politician in some regards than a Jedi. Like looking at bringing that perspective of, a win isn't a win when there's this much death around.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That is good. I think what I liked about it is I liked how looks like we're freezing up again. Hold on.
Okay.
Sorry, we're having some pixelation issues, but we're just working through it. So what I liked about Clone Wars was I like that scene with Obi-Wan riding that lizard thing, and I liked the fight with Grievous was really cool, and I liked I thought I never understood the political depth that the emperor had in mind to get that all sorted out, how to set up who are the people that the Federation had to get rid of them and get rid of the droids in order to put the clones in. And of course it's the introduction of Boba Fett and how we get introduced to young Boba Fett. So I thought that was cool. Did you know that each of the movies, the opening sequences are the same? So 1, 4, and 7. And I notice it with this one. So Clone Wars opens with the Rebel fighters fighting in space, and Empire opens with them fighting in space. And I'm pretty sure The Last Jedi opens with them fighting in space. So they all share the same opening sequences, I think. I could have that wrong.
No, I think you're right, though, because Last Jedi opens up with that scene where Poe is in the starfighter facing off against the dreadnought. Remember, he's got the big booster rocket on the back. He's going to take out all the surface guns so the bombers can make it in.
Oh, right. And it might even be 2. I could be wrong, but then 1, 4, and 7, and therefore 2, and all the other ones. I think the cameras pan the same way too. Like you notice the words scroll out, and then the camera will pan in some direction. Let's say in A New Hope it pans up. Then in Episode 1 it panned up or something like that. I could be wrong, but I think
that's crazy.
I heard that somewhere.
Yeah, that sounds like something they would do, like introduce a little Easter egg type thing.
Yeah, a Star Wars Easter egg, exactly.
All right, so my number 4 is your number 5. So what's your number 4?
My number 4 is Empire Strikes Back. Number 5 is Clone Wars. What's your number 5?
My number 5 is, let's see, what am I down to now? Because I'm doing this in real time. Let me see. So we talked about New Hope. We talked about Empire Strikes Back, Jedi. I think my number 5 is...
You have to start crossing them off.
3, 4. I got to go with Episode 1.
Oh, okay. Yep, it's a good placement.
I think Episode 1, and again, we talked about Episode 1, and so I won't go into nauseating detail, but I again, it's sort of the same thing with Clone Wars, like the fact they're introducing like a deeper degree of what it means to be a Jedi. I kind of appreciate it. I really thought that the bait and switch with the Queen and the handmaiden was kind of cool. I mean, you don't really think about that being like a Star Warsy type thing of like, hey, don't pay attention over here. Here we are. That little back and forth I kind of liked. And then also, I mean, the Darth Maul fight scene in that was just awesome. And I like a fight scene that's multifaceted, and the fact that you had, Ewan McGregor, I thought did a really good job in that scene of, he's running through that corridor with like the panels keep popping up and popping down, or the force fields keep popping up, and like that moment where he's almost there and then it pops back up and he is on one side of a glass wall watching his master die on the other side. And then when that door comes down, it's the first time that you see, outside of Luke in Jedi, the first time you see a Jedi Knight like rage out for a second and then like have to calm himself down. And it's like that was a really subtle nuance to that scene that I really appreciated, because you did see the like, you killed my master, I'm gonna F you up. wait, no, okay, hold on. That's not who I am. Let's be calm about this. If I default to my emotions, I'm in a lot of trouble because a Sith is a master of emotional combat. I need to be stoic. And you see him regroup in the middle of that fight. And I thought that was a really cool, very subtle little nuance.
Now I'm gonna have to go watch that fight again. You've described it so well. I love it.
That's so good.
Yeah, it's just the greatest fight scene ever. I agree. It's just good on so many levels. What's your number 6?
All right, what am I down to now? I should have written all this down.
You got to write this down and cross them off. Yeah, it'll become hard. Write them down.
Okay, so my number 6 is Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, okay. All right, that fits. Any highlights that we didn't talk about on that one for you?
No, I think I liked it for the same reason you did. The original trilogy, my sort of overall issue with the original trilogy, and we'll talk about my overall issue with the most recent trilogy. My sort of overall issue with the original trilogy is I like the origin story aspect. I like the background. I don't think I needed it broken down into so many bite-sized pieces. I just felt like the original trilogy was just a series of like, hey, do you remember this really cool guy? Yeah, well, here he is as a little kid. Okay,
it's a fair point.
Because he misses his parents. And that's true of, Anakin. It's true of Boba Fett. I mean, really, if you look at Anakin and Boba Fett, who in the original trilogy, meaning episodes 4, 5, and 6, you have Vader, scariest person in the world. And you've got Boba Fett, universe's most vicious bounty hunter. And then in the first 3, I get that they need to do the backstory, but I just didn't feel like going back to when they were 10 years old and being like, hey, here's all their parents dying. Here's them being left alone, and they're going to grow up and be terrible. Because I feel like they could have handled that a little better, because it felt like the entire synopsis of the first 3 movies is, if you're taken away from mom and dad, or if mom and dad are taken away from you, you have no choice but to grow up to be a big scary dude that wears a mask and kills people for a living.
That's a great point. And I didn't even see the similarities with Rey in the last trilogy. It's a great point.
Yeah, so they carry that over. But if you look, if they picked up Rey when she was they show the flashbacks of her watching her parents fly away, and okay, fine, that's enough of that. That's all I need. She's a little kid. She's devastated. Mom and dad are gone.
Oh, so that's a vision if they did it right. Okay.
Yeah, well, I don't right. No, better. Yes.
Okay, I see.
All right. So what's your number 7?
So let's see. I'm on number 6 still, I think. Yeah, Force Awakens is what I put as number 6. So that's the first one in the newest trilogy. And it only recently climbed to number 6. It normally would be number 10.
That's my number 7.
I do not like this movie. I didn't like it when it came out. I reacted to this movie as people reacted to Phantom Menace. That I was the Phantom Menace fan in this. I didn't like Poe Dameron. I thought it was corny. I thought the relationship between him and Finn was corny. Loved Rey. You can't find any fault with Rey. I can. Oh, okay.
No, just
shoot.
No, so this is my number 7. So
okay.
We're down to the last couple.
All right, we're back after some pixelation. All right, you were talking about Rey.
Oh, I was just saying. So number 6 was The Force Awakens for you. That's my number 7. So we're kind of flip flopped on these, much like we have.
Yep.
So the problem I felt with this movie was this movie felt like the agenda politically behind the scenes of the movie diminished the impact of the movie. Well, this is kind of coming off the heels of the Me Too movement and that sort of thing. It was placing a female in a very powerful lead, having Leia be the general of everything. It felt like that done in a more subtle way, I think would have been very powerful. And I loved that the main character was a woman in this. I thought that was a good choice, because this, up until that point, other than Leia and in some capacity Padme, particularly in Clone Wars, but there really wasn't a real strong female presence in a lot of the Star Wars action.
Right.
And Rey solved that in a really good way. I also liked that I liked the mystery element of who Rey really was. And I felt like that was a really interesting thing that carried through a lot of that movie, and also The Last Jedi. Like it really, like, not knowing who she was and then having that be a big reveal in the ninth movie, the third movie in that trilogy. I liked that element to it. I thought the reveal was a little bit lackluster, but I did like that. I mean, you figure the second half of 2015, all of 2016, and the first half of 2017, that's 2 years of people, podcasting and YouTube videos and data mining, trying to figure out who Rey really was. It was cool. It was like this giant, like, international social experiment of, like, detective work about a Star Wars movie. I thought that was so neat to be able to, like, watch and enjoy.
I want to talk about that, about who Rey was, because I think I'm still confused by it. But let's save that for the ending parts. So Force Awakens, for me, let me tell you why I didn't like it. It was I call this movie A New Hope Revisited. It was the same flipping movie. We got the X-Wing with Poe, that's Luke. We got Finn, that's Han. They even go in a trench, Zach, and shoot up a mega Death Star. I'm like, I was ready to have a new story told. I didn't need A New Hope Revisited. And it just drove me insane. Oh, and then the guy who plays General Hux, not the actor. He's a great actor. I have no fault with his acting. But the fact that he was, like, young, I'm like, why is he in control of so many people? I mean, we can get new Darth Vader is because of his force powers. But why is General Hux in control?
Thank you. Okay, so this is my issue. Okay, so they wanted to, like, youngen up, for lack of an accurate expression. They wanted to, like, add some youth to the Star Wars universe. I get it. Okay, Rey makes sense. She's 20 years old. She's an orphan. She has a force. She's a somehow magically a wonderful pilot, which is a whole other issue, but that's neither here nor there. And then you've got Kylo. And Kylo makes sense. He's a force user. He's a Jedi. I mean, he's a scary, scary dude. It doesn't matter if he's 20 or 50. He's a scary dude. I get it. That's right. Then you have General Huxley, who's like, hey, man, finished potty training yesterday, and now I'm taking over the Imperial fleet. Like, how? Like, that just, it made no sense.
Correct. Talk about where we needed some backstory on the character. Like, show him as a brilliant young protege, a brilliant tactician coming out of Empire school or something.
Right. And this is like, so a lot of the issues with, like, the Star Wars movies, not big overarching issues, but they're like, I call them one-line dialogue solutions. Like, you could have had Huxley walk in, or General Hux, whatever his name is. You could have had him walk into, like, the bridge of a ship, like, right in the beginning, have a bunch of, like, old generals kicking around, and had him give some ridiculous order and then walk away, and have the generals look at each other. And then, again, just sort of, providing, background right there could have been like, I cannot believe we have to take orders from a child. Or remember, he was raised by, the Emperor, or remember he finished top of his class in tactics. I mean, it's like, you could have, like, literally had just, like, one tiny 30-second piece of dialogue that completely explained everything. Or it could have been something like, Kylo trusts him because they went to school together.
Something.
Okay, all right, I get it. You're afraid of Kylo. Kylo wants this guy in there. Now this guy's in there, and that explains why he's 30 years your junior. You're taking orders from him.
Right. So the other thing, exactly, well said. The other thing I didn't like was the Snoke character. Like, I literally didn't know Zach. I just thought he was a giant being. Like, I didn't know if was this a projection? Who is he? I get it. It's Star Wars. We had to have a new villain, but I don't know. I just didn't like him. I didn't know who he was or what he was doing or why he'd be in control. But I figured that was part of the mystery, I guess. So
I did too, which is another thing about this movie that, again, like, I appreciate the who is Rey. All right. I appreciate the who is Snoke. But if you're gonna do two of that in a movie, that better pay off.
Right.
And it just didn't.
It didn't. That's what it is. There's no payoff. You nailed it. Exactly.
Like, and that's the problem. But this is also one of those things. It's like, all right, so if you had the who's Rey mystery and we knew everything about Snoke, then all right, great. Let's put all our eggs in the Rey basket. We'll make sure that reveal is just as good as Luke, I am your father.
Right.
If you're going to do it twice, you can't have both of them be nothing. Like, okay, so Rey is the granddaughter of the Emperor. Okay?
Yeah, let's go there, because I still don't quite figure out what this is. Yeah.
So here's my problem with that. Okay, so if Rey is the granddaughter of the Emperor, and the Emperor in the ninth movie is in seemingly a giant cloning facility, theoretically recloning troops to populate these 10 trillion ships that he made, then why did the Emperor never go after Rey?
Right.
How come when she was left somewhere, he didn't, I mean, capture and torture the parents to try to find the granddaughter? Or if she's not really his granddaughter and she was in fact some clone or something like that, then how would he not know where she is? Like the entire thing, like, you know, this is very much like that, you know, putting Noah in the basket and floating it down Egypt to get away from, you know, the whatever. Like, I get that that's kind of where they're going with that, but it's also like, I just don't get it.
Right. I mean, so that's who she, I didn't even know that. So she's the granddaughter of the Emperor. And
Well,
he's,
maybe. I mean,
oh,
Kylo tells her that she is, but he also had told her in the previous movie that she was the daughter of, you know, junk traders that sold her for food. I mean, like, so he sort of, the story keeps changing, and there's not, I don't think, and I might be misremembering, but I don't think there's a definitive, here is the actual truth.
oh, okay. Because to me, it doesn't fit at all. Like, I'm fine with her being another Anakin, but for the good. So she's just this person
Mm-hmm.
that's born with extreme force abilities. That's how I thought
Right.
she was. And her parents could very well have been junk traders, but, or maybe they recognized she had force powers and they had to like get her away, or they got sold into slavery, or who knows what it was. But I didn't understand this potential
Or
connection.
just died, or yeah, who knows? You know
Well,
what's
they
funny
do show
is
some
you know,
scene where she's crying and they're leaving in a ship or something, and that does come out. But
but also that, but that's her 3-year-old memory, so that could have literally been any ship. We don't even know if those
yeah,
were even really her parents, because what 3-year-old immediately, like my son at 3, I don't think would recognize my truck in a parking lot. How would
right.
she recognize that thing far
And
away? So
and I
sorry, go
forget,
ahead.
does she adopt the Skywalker name, or do they, like, I literally can't remember now.
Yeah, remember, so she's, the whole thing is, I'm just Ray, I'm just Ray, I'm just Ray, there's no last name, just Ray. And then like the last scene in the last movie, they're like, you know, she's like Ray, it's like family name. She like pauses for a moment and has this like sideways smile and goes Skywalker, and then that's kind of it.
Okay.
There's a lot of things in the Rise of Skywalker that like don't make sense. Like they kept trying to, like the last 3 movies, they kept trying to repeat the beats that work from the original trilogy, but it just didn't work. Like if you remember in the Rise of Skywalker, when she ends up with that dagger and she ends up
Yes.
at the fallen wreckage of the Death Star, and she ends up in the old bridge and she sees the Emperor's throne, and then they open the vault and she goes in to get that thing that guides you to where the Emperor is, even though you can't get there. It's like a little like holocron, pyramid thing. She goes in there and then she sees like evil Rey, which of course is a flashback to Empire Strikes Back, where Luke goes into the cave and he sees Vader, and then he chops
Oh
Vader's head open, and it
yeah.
turns out it's actually him. You know, so they're trying to repeat these beats, but it just doesn't work.
Right, right. That's what it was. Yeah, that's what it was that I didn't like, how they kept trying to repeat the beats. It got too much. I liked some of them coming up again, but not all of them. All right, let's go through like the last 3, because then I want to add one question that'll take us some time, and then we can wrap this up. So I think I
Okay,
wrote
so
down, I made some
yeah, my
boo-boos.
my
Yeah, go ahead.
7, 8, 9 are Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker. Those are my 7, 8, and 9 in that order.
Okay.
So
I've got, my 7 is Rise of Skywalker, then
mhm.
Return of the Jedi, and then what's the third
Wait,
note?
Return of the Jedi or the Last Jedi?
I have the Ewok one as very last.
Okay, got it. Return of the
So
Jedi.
that's Return. Yeah. So I go, let me get this right. Force Awakens, Rise of Skywalker, Last Jedi, then Return of the Jedi. Is that right?
Got it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
The only thing I remember about Return of the Jedi and the Ewoks is I thought the stormtroopers with the new helmets was cool. I like that they're in the jungle, and I like those speeders. That's about all I
The speeder
remember.
bike, yeah, the speeder bike chase scene with Luke where he cuts the front of the one off and it like blows up like that. That was a
Yeah.
pretty cool scene.
And I guess I want to end with, before we talk about Rogue One a little bit and stuff, is Force Awakens grown on me. So I've seen it since, maybe 2 to 3 more times, and I'm like, okay, I got to ease up a little bit. New generation, what I thought was campy and the hugging of Poe and Finn actually does occur in A New Hope. I just must have been a kid and not recognize it as being hokey. And I'm not saying hugging another guy's hokey. It just felt forced. I'm like, you guys barely know each other. Why are you so exuberant? But it became on me. It became more of an okay movie. And
yeah, there were a lot of things in the last three, like so episode 7, 8, 9. There were a lot of things that they just happened too fast. Like where they're, Finn and Ray find each other. They've got BB-8. She whacks him with a staff. They fall down. There's a couple of stormtroopers. She fights them off. Then they're running like hell. They get into this junkyard and they're going for the good ship. And then the good ship gets blown up with a single shot. And then they turn around and they run to this old decrepit ship, which takes them a little while to get going and yet somehow doesn't get shot. And then she immediately, having seemingly never piloted a craft before, is now suddenly able to fly through the debris and wreckage of super star destroyers and outmaneuver, trained pilots. And then when the gun breaks on the bottom, is able to pull this like inverse Vin Diesel, Jason Statham, like the transporter flip thing and upside down, and somehow position her ship in just such a way that the locked broken gun shoots exactly and in one shot kills the TIE fighter from this, again, First Order, which is supposed to be the most elite fighting force in the galaxy at this point. One shot, gone. Like it's just this, like, that, and then like them like hugging and running around down the ship, like, oh my god, you had the shot, and then there was this. I can't believe, how do you know how to do that? Oh, I just thought I'd do it. Okay, great. It's just like that. It just happened too fast.
That one didn't bother me for whatever reason. The fantasy, she's got super force powers that she doesn't know about. I call that movie hand waving, and I was
Sure.
fine with it. It's probably because I haven't seen 7 and 8, 9 enough to really talk that intelligently. I don't remember that much about them, but yeah, I did like how it ended. I liked it wrapped it all up. I love that water scene on that really crazily tilted ship with the big waves crashing in on Adam Driver and Kylo Ren and stuff. It was all pretty cool, I have to say.
They did, and but again, getting back to that, it all happened too fast thing. That's like so the Rise of Skywalker. They end up on I can't remember if it's Tatooine or not. I can't remember where it is. But they end up and they fall down. Remember, they're looking for the bounty hunter. They find a ship, and they fall down through that hole. There's that big snake thing.
Oh yeah.
That she uses the Force heal, and she introduces it, and then they use that like several more times in the movie. That's one of those things that, again, like, it bugs me that you put in place a plot device this far into a series of movies that becomes the one thing that solves all the problems. Because she heals that worm, and everyone's like, how do you know how to do that? She's like, I don't know, I just touched this giant murder worm and healed it, hoping that it wouldn't kill us. And they're like, oh, okay, cool, hey, let's grab that rusty knife over there and get out of here, because there's a dead body over here the worm just ate 20 years earlier, and we got to get back to a ship. And so they do. And then there's like the Chewbacca gets taken, and she grabs the ship, and there's the Force lightning by accident and blows it up. And you're like, oh my god, did they really just kill Chewie? And I remember sitting there going like, dude, Han died in the last movie. Chewie can't die. And I'm losing my friends. You can't do this to me. But
so
they did that, and then then there's the fight scene with the waves crashing, and Leia distracts Kylo, and Rey takes advantage of the moment and kills him, which is very un-Jedi-like. But then she immediately has that moment of regret, and then she heals him. Okay, that's the second time we've used it. And then we get to the end of the movie, and the Emperor is just kicking everything. And he ends up using that and ends up essentially killing himself by transferring all of his Force energy.
Yeah, like sucking all of his life power.
Yeah. It's just like those sort of like plot device things just drive me a little batty in movies.
I did like how a Jedi, there's been this canon of what Sith can do, Force lightning, Jedis can't. I did like the interplay with that. I thought that was pretty cool. It's to suggest it's not a Sith Jedi thing. It's how you use the Force or how you're feeling inside emotionally kind of thing. I thought that was pretty cool.
I did. I sort of took issue with that a little bit, only because it felt to me like they showed Rey using the Force lightning, meaning she's good, but she has access to the dark side if she chooses it. And then they flip-flop that at the end, which is Kylo is a bad guy who can use the Force heal, because Rey was able to use the one dark side power.
Oh, that's not how I view it.
No. Oh, okay.
I view it as what you talked about with Obi-Wan in the scene where Qui-Gon Jinn dies, in that he had to compose himself or he might lose the battle. I view it as she's so enraged, the rage turns the Force into lightning, and
Oh, okay.
love turns the Force into heal. So it wasn't that she borrowed the power. She was enraged, and she's like, lightning pops out, and she's like, oh my God, like inner rage. And so in the end, his inner love came back to him, and that's how he was able to heal. Like the Force
I think
manifests.
you might have
itself.
just salvaged that movie for me in just that quick little explanation.
Yeah, that's how I view it.
That's true, clever.
Yeah.
All right. Did you want to talk about Solo and
just super
Rogue
quick?
One?
I really, out of the two, Rogue One, absolutely love it. I love how they took the little kernel of knowledge. And for those that don't know, in A New Hope, the Death Star gets blown up by this one throwaway line of like, these plans came at an extreme cost or something. And
Like
I
many
love how
many Gungans had to die to get these plans to us, or something along those lines.
Yeah, I love how they turned that whole thing into a movie, which I take from fan interest or something. And then I love how what you called in what it does is transcends genre. It's a heist movie.
Yeah.
It's a heist movie. So I just love it. Oh, and the ending completely surprised me. I didn't, I don't know.
I'll tell you that's one of those few movies where, like when you went to go see Titanic, you knew the ship was going to sink.
Right.
This movie, I feel like you walked in not really believing that they were going to have like a mega death, unhappy ending in a Star Wars movie. Like
correct.
Just that, and that was one of the things that makes that movie so good is like that really was surprising, and it was really well done. I mean, that's the very end. They're sitting there and they're holding hands, and they didn't make it as big romantic like love story behind the scenes. It was just there's these two people that are up against insurmountable odds, and you know what? This time they don't win.
They don't win. I know, it's so good.
But do they? Because had they not sacrificed themselves, the Death Star plans never would have made it off the planet.
Right.
So it's kind of one of those, like, she was really one of those really interesting, greater good characters that worked really well.
So good. So good. Loved it. And some people didn't like Han Solo, the movie. I thought it was fine. I thought it was just fine. I thought
it was okay. I mean, I didn't really have an issue with it. I mean, it's
I know people really got into nerd rage how he got his name, standing at the counter of the Empire and like, what's your last name? Solo. Again, it didn't bother me. It's a comic book. That's how I viewed it.
I thought it was kind of cute. I thought it was kind of true to his character. It was just like an off the cuff remark that now, like, what, all by yourself here at the counter, son, what's your name? Solo.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Love it.
Yeah.
All right. Here's my last burning question for you. And if it turns into another podcast, we'll do that. But it's a deep thought. Here's the premise. George Lucas, everybody knows this, has made changes to what originally hit the movie screen and the VHS. I can remember those changes are burned into my mind. And there's scenes like in A New Hope where there's additional stormtroopers. There's scenes with the different animals. There's just little stormtrooper scenes where they're like, the droids went this way. That just wasn't in the original. And they stick out.
The whole thing with the Boba Fett and Han Solo where they're in the hangar and he steps over Boba Fett. It's like the introduction of Boba Fett that got like retconned into A New Hope.
I don't remember that one.
I'm sorry, not Boba Fett.
Jabba the Hutt.
Jabba the Hutt.
Oh yeah, that whole scene with Jabba the Hutt, horrible. Yeah, totally horrible.
But again, you can kind of feel in that movie, much like in the prequels, what they were trying to do was say, okay, here's some cute things that we throw in that make it a little bit more kid friendly or a little bit more kid interesting. Or
no, those came in from. I watched a documentary on this that George Lucas made those changes because in his mind, maybe not the Jabba the Hutt one, but in most of them, in his mind, they were supposed to have been in the movie. He wanted them in the movie, and he either had to edit it to length or he didn't have the technology to do it. Or he did it and tried it and looked terrible. And so this documentary raised a really good point, which is, does the creator always retain creative rights over their concept to which they can make whatever flippant changes they want? So let's pretend that the Mona Lisa, if the creator was alive today and he's like, no, I don't like it, I'm going to repaint it. Or does art, film, whatever, transcend the creator and go into the public domain where it's owned by the public and like, don't change my movie. You cannot change the Mona Lisa. You can't alter that statue. I'm like, that's fascinating because I don't like the changes he made, but part of me's like, I do feel like they're my movies, but they're really his. Now I'm torn.
So, all right, let me answer that with I'm going to keep this as short as I can because I can get very long-winded on this topic, but this sort of falls into this phenomenon, I think, when it comes to like culturally significant things to you. So like Star Wars is important to me. It's not mine, but it's important to me. If you rewind the clock a number of years, let's go back to when I was in, let's say, high school, middle school. Loved comic books, loved Star Wars, loved nerd culture, loved Dungeons and Dragons, loved board games, loved all that stuff. I was a social pariah because I was such a geek. And now that those things have become mainstream,
yeah, they're very chic
I
now.
battle a little bit with that though, because it's like the thing that caused me all the teasing is now the thing that the guys that used to give me wedgies are, taking their kids to go see and loving and owning as part of their cultural experience within, everything. Like there's a part of me that like, I feel like your question and that phenomenon that I just explained are sort of hand in hand of, very much like, when Star Wars was not cool, it was my thing. And now it's everybody's thing. When Captain America was not cool, it was still my thing, but now it's everybody's thing. So does everyone else loving a thing dilute it to you? And the answer to that should be no.
For me, it's no.
But somehow there's that little twinge in there of, but does it?
All right, so here's where I like that analogy. Here's where I come in on that. Same thing, teased for playing Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't exactly walk into school with my D&D modules on the outside, and you just didn't do that back then. And now I'm like, yeah, see everybody? This is what I've been telling you. Comics are great, and comic stories are great, and playing D&D is really fun. As a matter of fact, I have an idea that for people who didn't grow up with D&D, like maybe you and I did, I want to somehow be a dungeon master for a whole bunch of people that's never played before or something, like over Zoom or something like that.
So I had this idea a couple of months ago, and I was talking to my buddy Aaron about this. And I thought it'd be a lot of fun. So my wife does these girls' nights where all her girlfriends come over to the house. I cook a big dinner for them. They watch a movie or whatever else. The last ones they watched were like 50 Shades of Grey or something like that. So it's been a while since this happened. But I was saying to her, it would be fun to do like a heavily modified, simplified version of a Dungeons and Dragons type game with all of her girlfriends, because they've never done anything like that. And it would be so much fun to kind of see that first experience and whether or not they even enjoyed it.
Yeah. So no, I'm like, hey, welcome to the fold. Glad you're here. Sorry you missed out on 20 years. And I still feel like the people that must like the Pats before the Pats were any good. Like I'm that guy. Like so I still feel like it's special to me because I've known about it all these years, and I'm happy to welcome people into the fold. What I do find interesting is I did not like Lucas changing my movies. And then when I saw that documentary, I'm like, I don't know that they're mine. They are his. It's his creation. So I think I'm in the camp of, hey, when you make a statue and put it on the square, sorry, that's public domain. So I'm like, hey, when you make a New Hope and Han shoots first, yeah, that's the movie. And don't be putting in stormtroopers where there aren't any. I'm in that camp. Oh, looks like you're either pondering with your hands or I've lost you again. Oh, okay. You're coming back. Yes. Okay.
Come on. I can still hear you.
All right, good. Just don't worry about video. I had ended with.
Stranger, can you hear me?
Oh no.
So the idea of a creator changing a thing that may or may not be in the public domain. Okay.
Yep.
Oh man, is this really going to blow up this far into this stupid thing?
I know. I can still hear you though.
Hear me?
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, technical.
You got me?
Yeah, go.
Raef, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
I can hear you, but I feel like there's a delay on my.
Okay, again, we had some technical issues, but we're back. And Zach, you're about to talk about the concept of, is it the creators or in the public domain?
Right. So, okay. So you have this phenomenon of like, all right, so George Lucas made Star Wars, and then years later he went back and made changes that he felt made the movie better.
Well,
So
I don't know
the
if he
question,
thought it made it. I don't know that he thought it made it better. I've heard it was what his vision was or is.
okay, so then, all right, so then he made changes that made the movie truer to his vision of what that movie should be.
Yes.
Fair? Okay, fair. All right. So you have that phenomenon, and then you have us on either side of it, which is the consumer of that media. So you have that side of things, and is it okay for him to change it? Is it not okay? Is it mine? Is it his? Like, where does all that lie? So you take that, but then you look at like the other side of that. The other side of that is like you look at like some of the fairy tales that we have, or some of the older like things like so like Icarus. So the story that we know now of Icarus is, he had these wings, they're made of feather and wax. His dad said, don't fly too close to the sun or you'll, the wax will melt, you'll die. And Icarus doesn't listen to him. And what does he do? He flies as high as he can, and the sun melts the wax and he falls to the earth and he dies. Now, the reason behind that story, and the reason why we know that story, is because, years, I mean, hundreds of years ago, that was a story to keep people at their level. You had serfs in England and, people that were serving the kings and everything else. And so there were a lot of stories that were crafted around the idea of don't shoot too high because you'll fall hard.
Yes.
But the original version of that story is that he has wings that are crafted, and his father says, don't fly too close to the river because if your wings get wet, you'll fall in and drown. And so the story changed from don't stay down here, get up here and see what you can find, to don't climb too high because the fall will hurt you. So then that is a version of a story, a fable, a something that got changed for the reasons of like control. So I think when it comes to like media changing, or when it comes to, things changing, in the public domain, I think the question is intention.
Okay.
If your intention is to change a thing in the interest of like manipulating somebody, I think that's a very different thing than changing something to try to make it, more true to your vision.
So you're behind the artist in that one.
I am. And I, much like you, I struggle with the idea of like, that's not my Star Wars movie. The new ones are not my Star Wars movie. That's not my New Hope. My New Hope is the 1987 VHS tape that I have sitting on my bookshelf in my basement. That's mine. But that doesn't mean that my son's New Hope won't be the one that has, the extra scene with Boba Fett. Or sorry, why am I always drawing blank on this guy's name?
Jabba.
Jabba the Hutt. Like that could be his, and that's just what it is.
That might be one of the things I'll end on this note is I'm like a minimalist type of person. I try to get rid of all extraneous things, and I just like to minimalize. And so I had all the 6 original VHS tapes, to which I then tossed to then have the DVDs, which I've then tossed because I now just own them through my Xbox digitally. And I regret it because now I can't watch my Star Wars because I've thrown them away. I've heard that you can't even get the VHS unless it's bootleg or something. I've heard, I don't know if it's true, but I've heard rumors.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's all changed. So anyway.
I guess to answer your question as simply as I can, I don't like the new Star Wars, but I don't feel like it's mine to judge.
And when you say new, you mean the edits that were made to episodes 4, 5, and 6?
To episodes 4, 5, and 6. Like I don't like it, but I don't really think it's mine. I think I'm on the fence, but I think I tend to err more on the side of the creator.
I'd like to, if there's an opportunity, if anybody knows, if like you can still get legally, if you can still get the, the my Star Wars of 1976 or 77, let me know.
Hey, I'd be curious.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for going down this path. Hopefully you and I will have some other ones. We had an idea of Zach and Raef. What was it? Zach and Raef talk while Zach
I wrote it down right here.
Tank.
It said, Raef calls Zach while he cleans the aquarium.
Yeah. And so, are you able to show us the aquarium? Is it in this office? It
is. Here's my little aquarium. You can see it's a little bit filthy.
Okay.
I've got snails, clown killies, which are the fish, and then I've got a bunch of cherry shrimp that are all hiding right now. So
is it saltwater?
No, it's freshwater.
Okay. Do you like saltwater?
I have not really gone down the rabbit hole of saltwater aquariums quite yet. This was sort of the evolution of this was my son really wanted a fish. So we bought him a fish. The fish jumped out of the tank on like day one. So we went and got another fish. That fish died. Went and got 3 more fish. Those fish all died. And finally I was like, dude, what are we doing to this poor kid? So we got rid of that aquarium. I brought it here and we got him a 5-gallon aquarium and, like planted, so like live plants, all the rest of the stuff, did all that. And so we've been really good about keeping shrimp alive and really bad about keeping fish alive. And now he's completely lost interest. So
there's an art and science to it for sure.
Yeah. So I now have an aquarium full of cherry shrimp and little clown chilies, which are these teeny tiny little fish.
Cool.
That I love to death, but he is no longer interested in the aquarium.
Okay. Well, now you have it. Remind me to tell you another time about the little mini aquariums that you can have for saltwater that I found accidentally up in Maine, but that's a story for another day. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. If you want to reach Zach and I and talk Star Wars, our emails will be in the show notes. I'm Raef Granger, and that's you.
Oh, is that me? And I'm Zach Saunders.
All right. Till next time. Thanks for listening.
Thanks. Like the summer market's usually very busy with like purchase stuff, but there tends not to be a lot of refi action going on. But it's just this perfect storm of like the rates drop, there's no inventory, which means there's like this like frantic push for like every deal. So you combine the fact that you've got people that are like champing at the bit because they want to get their refis done to save money or pull cash out. You've got purchases that are going fast and furious. You've got houses that are hitting the market on Friday. I have one of my best friends in the world is a real estate agent down in Nashua. He took a listing a couple of weeks ago, and I want to say it was maybe like the 31st of May, that Sunday that it hit, or maybe it was a Friday, so it would have been like probably, I guess, the 29th of May. He had 62 showings Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. 62 showings on a listing in 3 days. Now, granted, the house was gorgeous and it was priced very well. But I mean, when you have that level of like hyper focus, I mean, it's almost like every house that hits the market is like a cow leg getting dropped into the Amazon River, and the piranhas are just all over. I mean, it's just, you almost can't keep up. I mean, and then you run into other like little like seemingly silly problems that are actually like really stressful. Like I have last week, I had 4 customers make an offer on the same house.
Wow.
And I can't say anything. You know what I mean? It's not like I can be like, oh, hey, this guy's offering more. So I can't say. So I'm writing pre-approval letters going like, I know that you're not the highest offer, but I can't say anything because I can't. So, it's just,
gosh.
So, no inventory, low interest rates, crazy refis, and just like chaotic market. It's just, I mean, it's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming.
In a good way. Yeah.
It's overwhelming. I don't have it. I'd give you advice if I had some, but I don't. I don't know that world. I can imagine it, but I don't know that world. I mean, normally some advice that I give, but I don't think it fits, is stuff called necessary ending. Like what can be pruned off the tree, even if it's viable. But I don't know that fits in this scenario. I see a lot of business people do that, and I often coach that where they're like, I've got this idea, I've got this idea, I've got this idea, I've got this idea, and all of them are viable. But the analogy is just like a rose bush. A gardener prunes specific branches on purpose to get the rose bush and the rose that she wants. And so businesses are the same way. And I think because of the normal mantra, so I don't know if this will help you at all, but because of the normal mantra of like, oh, I better make hay when the sun is shining, or the belief like, I don't, this might end and I might be destitute tomorrow, I better take it all as it comes in. I fight that mantra. Is that true? I don't know that that's true, by the way.
I don't know that it's true, but I don't know that it's not true either.
I hear you.
I think much like everything, I think a universal truth is a very difficult thing to say definitively exists in almost any capacity.
Right.
I think, it's like the idea of, so my business, because of the sort of transactional nature of most of it, it feels very difficult to not capitalize on every opportunity that comes in, because you don't know when that next opportunity is coming in. But it's also,
you're not a naturopath, meaning if a naturopath starts to get busy, well, her rates go from 100 an hour to 200 an hour to 3, or lawyers or psychologists, or like you earn more money by doing more volume. And it's just that simple. And to be able to have the systems in place for that, like if you know this is just a flood water, sure. If you know like this could be all the time, well, you'll have 3 Zacks under you, you know, and 1 Zackette. And
then the thing that I'm learning right now, though, which is that this is the cautionary tale that I ignored for so long, and now I'm feeling the pain of it, is when stuff was slow and I had bandwidth to train somebody, I should have been hiring someone. But it was that, you know, you get into that like weird like pseudo psychology of, you know, I'm not that busy. Do I really want to be shelling out a salary? Do I really want to be paying somebody? Do I really want to be doing? No, not really. You know, I'm kind of slow. And then here we are in, you know, June, and it's like, all right, so there's like literally millions of dollars more in business than I thought that there was going to be in each of the months from May through who knows when. And there's low-hanging fruit that I can't capitalize on in the way that I would like to, because there's just not enough hours in the day.
I do have advice for you.
Go, hit me.
Do you want unsolicited advice?
Always.
Okay. We know you've been in this industry a long time. We know your well is not going to dry up. We know you're not going to, you know, run out of work. So what I would do is whenever you can, and do whatever you need to do to get to this mental space. Run, jog, bike, meditate, do yoga, play a video game, whatever. Get to a space where you can sit calmly with you yourself, have a meeting with yourself, and say, how much money do I want to make this next 6 months? And how many hours do I want to flip and work? It's just that simple. Right. And then just look at it and you go, I want to work 50 hours a week. I don't know, call me crazy. That's all I want to do. How many cases is that a day? Do the math. You're really good at math. You'll have your numbers. And when you get to 35 cases a month, number 36, you say, I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to refer you to so-and-so. And does your business allow referral fees?
Not in and of itself. I mean, the nice thing is, you know, I've got Trisha on my team. So if I needed to, I could outsource some stuff to her. Right now, I'm sort of battling that. I'm battling that selfishness of I can still keep up. But the thing I'm realizing now is this is like a diminishing capacity keep up. Like 2 weeks ago, I was fine. Last week, I was a little behind. Today, I'm a little more behind. Tomorrow, I'm going to be a little bit more. Eventually, I'm going to reach that point where I need to outsource, but I just don't.
Well, I call it the pizza rule, because you do risk a problem happening, which is Zach becomes not awesome. Because by trying to help 50 people, if your capacity is 35, you're going to drop eggs, and then you're going to get egg on their face and your face, and you're going to hate yourself for that. But I call it the pizza rule. Like, I will go back to the pizza shop that goes, hey, your pizza's going to take 2 hours. Not tell me the standard 15 and lie to me, right? Or, you know what, sir, we can't even seat you. Sorry, full. Okay.
Well, that's like I was laughing earlier, and I was saying I'm going to go grab my water. I forgot it in the other room. I'm still on the call, but
okay, gotcha.
I was laughing the other day, and I was saying that, you know, like it's unusual for me not to get back to somebody same day, but like last week, it's been like I will get to you by the end of the day tomorrow, and now it's like I'll get to you by the end of the week. You know, and it's just, I think people kind of respect that level of like upfront honesty and expectations.
Yes.
But it's also frustrating to have to be in that space.
That's another thing you could do. You probably have already done it. That's my other unsolicited tip is set your email responder and set your voicemail responder to say something. Hey, due to the unusual, you know, amount of work that's here, I normally return calls within 48 hours. You won't get a return call within 7 weeks. I mean, 7 days or something. And if that means you need to go somewhere to get served right now, totally understand. But just by having that message out there can make you sleep a little bit better at night.
Yeah.
I would do that. Sometimes a lawyer's calendar would get that busy with trials and whatnot. You know, if I'm in a trial in the courtroom, I'm not returning calls. And I found that by setting that responder or having my paralegal state that response, people were fine.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I think part of that is, I mean, it's kind of funny how like open people are to waiting if you are good about letting them know they're going to have to wait. You know, it's like the idea of, like you were saying before about the restaurant, like if you walked in and they were like, oh yeah, we'll have you seated in 15 minutes, in 30 minutes, you're mad. If they told you an hour and they sat you in 45 minutes, you're thrilled.
Correct. And you're thrilled that they were honest so that you could say, you know what, let's go somewhere else. You know, our kid's too hungry to wait, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.